My guest today is Val Katayev. Val Katayev is a serial entrepreneur with 100 million plus in profits and exits. Founded and led 4 successful companies to hypergrowth centered around digital media in display, mobile, music, search, and data. Thanks a lot for coming to the Holdco Builder show, Val.
Thanks for having me, Meg.
So let's start with your journey. In the beginning of this year, you posted 25 years ago, I bet $80 on myself. It was $70 for 2-year domain registration plus $10 for hosting. I didn't know how to code, only had a computer for about a year. That $80 bet turned into 100 million. Nothing can come close to betting on yourself. That seems like a fascinating story. Can you please share more about how did you do that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, back in the days, you had one registrar, which is register.com, and they had a 2-year minimum to register a domain. It was $35 a year, and you had to pay $70. That's where the $70 came from. Look, I feel like if you don't bet on yourself, meaning trying something, right, doing something on your own, it could be a side hustle. It doesn't you don't have to leave your job to do it, right? A lot of people are afraid and to leave their work. Like, you could do this on the side, and you could do it on the weekends. And a lot of times I post, and a lot of people get pissed when I say things on the weekend. I'll be like, if you're not working on your side hustle or your startup right now, it's Saturday, it's Sunday. Well, you don't want it bad enough, right? And you get a lot of people who will kind of jump in and get a little worked up when about work-life balance. But hey, you got to make a decision. If you want that extra, you got to make some of those sacrifices, in my opinion. And when you make that, when you try those things, you start seeing other opportunities, right? It kind of start snowballing one after another, and that's how, for me at least, that's how things worked out. I kept just trying something, and then something worked. One of those 5 things worked, and then you take that, you build it a little bit, you see some extra opportunities from that, and you try other things again, and maybe either you bolt on to whatever you're doing already, or sometimes you pivot and you go into a new direction, and maybe you hold on. Like for me, I held on to a number of my businesses, and I have a Holdco today as a result, not because I acquired these businesses, but because I just kept building new ones, and having teams to step in and and grow them to the next level as well. So I mean, that's what it was about. You gotta invest in yourself. A lot of times investing in yourself is not that expensive. It's really your time, and when you don't have too much, that time is not that valuable in terms of financial terms.
Did you always have these big ambitions? I mean, you've done very much with having very little when you're getting started. How was the beginning for you?
I don't know what it is. I always knew I'm going to be successful. I mean, since the age I was a little kid, I had my eyes set my high. I don't know why. I didn't have anybody super successful financially in my family or anything like that, or even surrounding family. Coming to this country at the age of almost 11, you didn't really even have anybody in your circle. Everybody was an immigrant because everybody kind of came from former Soviet Union at the same time. So all your relatives, all your cousins, there was nobody really in your circle who's very successful, right? So it's not like I saw somebody, I was like, man, I want to be like that guy in my family or our friends. But I had this ambition to do business, and at first I always thought I'm going to be a developer, like a programmer or something like that. So I do something in tech, but eventually kind of I love marketing, finance, tech. So that's how I landed where I am.
Do you have some type of, or can we say a so-called trademark story which you share, where today, for example, when you're raising capital for your next project, a story which gives an overview of who you are and what you've gone through?
I've never used it to raise money, so I don't really raise a lot of money aside, for my companies or anything like that. Although I do now take some money for our real estate projects. I've never raised VC money or any of my actual companies. I never really tell this story, but there is one story that kind of says a lot, I think, about me, and I think about it today. I was 18 years old, 19 years old, and this is before before I hit big, with my first successful, very successful company. But what I was doing, I started selling online ads because I had my own PlayStation website. That was my first, little thing I'd started doing, and I started selling online ads, and I quickly realized that I don't have enough inventory, and I had more demand for these ads. And by the way, this is post 1999 2000 bubble, right? So like everything, all online ad demand just crashed 90%, right? So I figured out how to sell directly to myself. So what I started doing is I started representing some other video game sites. I said, okay, there are video games sites that are much bigger than my little PlayStation site. So that's what I started doing. I started calling those other video game sites and say, hey, can I sell this in this spot on your website? I'll get you X amount of dollars. And the story is one of these game sites. I forgot where he was located, somewhere in like Europe. The owner, the webmaster. I was selling out his site like month after month after month. And at some point, I owed him like $20,000 or something like that, $10,000. I don't remember exactly the numbers, but it was like tens of thousands of dollars. And I can't get through to the guy, right? I'm collecting money from the advertisers because and then I have to pay the publisher, right? And I can't get through to the guy. He's not answering me. I'm like, dude, I need your wire information. Like, I need to send you money, and he's not answering me. So I chased him for probably 9 months, maybe a year, to pay him his money. Like, I was the one chasing him to pay him, And today I realize how that is not common. It's like I think the average person will just say, well, whenever he comes out of the woodworks, I'll pay him. It's not my problem. I think that's kind of like the ethics of business for me. Were pretty strong from day one, even before I had anything. So anyway, I never really tell that story in a pitch, or that's not part of my pitch. I mean, I know you asked me what I say in a pitch, but that's not. It's just something that kind of stuck with me that I felt strongly about my my ethics of doing business, not just being aggressive at all costs.
Can you share which type of businesses did you start? I was reading a story. You made the first million by age of 19, and after that, in your 20s and early 30s, things went on another level. What type of businesses did you start?
So the first successful one was I just discovered search advertising, paid search advertising, and this is kind of before Google even took off. Back then, it was like Overture. Sorry, it was GoTo.com first, and became Overture, became Yahoo Search. Paid search marketing, and because it was so new, nobody really knew about it. There weren't really agencies doing it back then, although there was like probably one. I just started taking performance-based advertisers, and a lot of them were brands, and not just like regular like affiliates, but like I was getting brand deals and spending that money on search to drive traffic to them. So that was the first one. That was successful. Then after that, kind of start seeing Google kind of dominating too much, and I didn't want to be beholden to them for everything I do. I started a kind of a platform, or a system, I should say, that distributes and connects people who want music content. Initially, it was ringtones across the globe, right? So that was Ringtone Matcher, and the company was called Tone Fuse. So anything really where I found inefficiencies, where not am I just arbitraging, but I'm adding some kind of level of value in between. It doesn't have to be super sophisticated, but sometimes it gets a little sophisticated. That wasn't that sophisticated, but I did the work of just putting all the pieces of the puzzle together and making them work together. And I think that's what I've been pretty good at, getting things off the ground with, right? And then later on you start building teams around that, and Salesforce and infrastructure and et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a lot of like digital media because it's easier to and quick to scale. I love digital media because you could just turn on the button and you get access to millions of people and you pay for it. I love paying for it because it's actually easier to control the scale, right? I haven't really been very good at building things where you get organic audiences. It's not my thing. I like to have full control over who sees the messaging, how at what intensity they see the messaging. So to me, that was always like I was always in the paid advertising world as a result, because I think I could just like sculpt my demand and supply against that as well.
Media businesses can be insane because I know a guy who started like 10 years ago a VPN, like a review site. I just ended up on his, in Estonia, for example, you can see a company's numbers, how they do, what type of margins, and the margins were like insane, 80 to 90% a year. And 1 year the revenue was more than 9 million euros. And I started looking more about this business. And he was on Google when you were looking for VPN reviews 2020, for example, he was first or second. And I didn't really understand his business model, but I live in a small place. I saw him in a restaurant. I know who he was. I approached him, and then we got into a conversation. And he said that he didn't use paid ads. It was all organic, all through SEO. And 1 year, the numbers were like 9.5 million euros revenue, and I think 8.5 million in profit. And he got an acquisition offer for, I think it could be 25 million. He said no. But now Google has probably changed something, and he's more into this 2 million revenue, 1.5, 1.6 million profit. So media businesses, they can be insane.
Yeah, especially when you got platform risk, like right, like if it were, if you're, especially if you're SEO. I mean, I have a story like that. I acquired freebusinesscards.com at one point, just a domain, built out some content, and became number one on Google for free business card. And all I did is I would just refer the traffic to an affiliate program that I had a relationship with, who used to give away free business cards. And that business, like I bought that domain for like $200,000, and that generated over $1 million, just doing nothing. It was the ugliest looking website, and I had somebody write up like 50 different stories about business cards, just to create that content. And it just it's crazy. But then one day Google just had one of their big updates and just fell off the face of the earth, and that was pretty much it. I mean, some of these things could really take off, and the timing could be very important sometimes if you don't have a strong strategy around like diversification, or expanding the business to build on top of whatever you've done, right? You almost have to look at it like, okay, I just got a platform, right? I got some cash coming in, I have some audience, I have relationships. How do I now build on top of that? That's not going to affect me if Google does drop me from, for whatever reason, or whoever drops you, whatever platform. So, I mean, that's the big thing about media companies. You got to think about that at all times.
You're one of those rare people who have had success after success after success. Obviously, I'm sure there has been some projects which haven't been going that well, but the big hits, they have been very big. Can you maybe think about what type of strategies and approaches have been always working? Is there anything common between those businesses?
Well, a lot of my business are distribution, is my focus. However, I am now in real estate development. That's not really a distribution game, so that's very different. But I always love distribution. I love building out distribution networks, and right now I'm focusing on building out a distribution through independent jewelers and fine jewelers. So we found that space pretty interesting. We could use a lot. We could bring a lot of services and to that space, and because a lot of these jewelers sell pretty much the same thing to some degree, that distribution could be very much work. So I like distribution where it's also very streamlined, organized, meaning like you're selling something very specific. So for example, like liquor stores, right? They all sell the same thing, right? Just many different locations. So you could focus on certain set of services and products, and then enhance on top of that. All knowing that all of them really have the same problems, same more or less solutions that you could bring to them, right? So that's kind of been like one of the things that kind of intersecting between a number of my businesses. I wouldn't say all of my businesses, but many of them.
You mentioned the jewelry business. Do you look at the market size in general? For example, the jewelry market, I was reading it's $180 billion market. When making those decisions of, okay, I'm going to pursue this opportunity, do you look at the market size overall, or how's your thought process about this?
Yeah, I mean, the jewelry industry is, yes, definitely. The jewelry industry is probably more like 300 billion globally. I think 180 of it is the fine jewelry segment. Is probably what you saw. Yes, I mean, at this point, if I'm going to build something interesting that kind of that could really scale, I need something that has a market to to be able to scale into. So absolutely. I mean, when I was thinking about what to build next, I was looking at very fragmented categories, but with a large TAM, right? And it was fragmented categories, large TAM. When I say fragmented, it probably means it's mostly independently owned, right? So I was looking at things like pizza shops and barber shops, bars, and things of that nature. They're highly fragmented, owned by independents, but have thousands and thousands of locations, but they all do the same thing.
I know you're extremely passionate about finance. Let's talk a little bit about fintech and peer-to-peer lending. You partnered with Prime Meridian Capital Management to help the firm grow its asset under management from 5 million to 500 million in 3 years. In one of your interviews, you mentioned that you can become a bank. So you know a lot about this industry. What was the initial idea and how did you get started with this?
The initial thing that kind of piqued my curiosity was when in 2006, I just came across a company called Prosper. It was way ahead of its time, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I could not put money, but like I see people who want to borrow money, and I could lend it to them, right, to this platform. And a bunch of people will actually pull their money together. So like, let's say if you want to borrow $2,000, this is very retail focused, right? This is before this whole space became institutionalized. So if somebody wants to borrow $2,000, they would actually say like, I need $2,000 to buy a server so I could build a website, or I need $2,000 to take my family on vacation, like whatever. It's like people had different reasons, and it was not very like, there was some credit score information, but it was also personal information, right? Which is crazy at the time. And I was like, oh wow, cool. Like I could be a bank. I could actually lend people money because I had some cash to invest at the time. So that's when I first thought like, yeah, you could be like a bank, right? That was actually like 2006, and went through all those loans were like 3-year duration, I believe at the time. So when I started investing into that in 2006, 2007, those 3-year loans went straight through the Great Recession, right? 2008. I honestly just like deployed the money and kind of stopped logging into my account. And then when the 2008 hit, I was pretty sure I'm wiped out. Just logged in a few months after the 2008 or whatever, and I actually eked out a small gain. I was like, wow, that's pretty solid. That's interesting. So when I sold my 2 companies in 2013, I need to like deploy. I wanted to put a bunch of money to work. I was like, man, I want to actually do that on a larger scale, right? Because that's just the way I am. Like, if I like something, I'm just gonna go crazy in, right? So I was like, yeah, that peer-to-peer lending worked out pretty well. Let's put a big chunk of my exit into that, right? So I called up Prosper, and at the time, Lending Club already was out, and I'm like, I need to put all this money to work. They're like, there's no way we can't put $20 million to work on on all these little peer-to-peer loans or marketplace lending loans at the time. And so they introduced me to a fund manager who just started the fund actually about probably it was probably a year into it. I think he had a couple of $1 million under management at the time, and I liked him. So I was like, hey, I'll give you the money. You're gonna deploy it, but I'm gonna become a partner in your business. By the way, I just exited my couple of companies and handed over my CEO role to my partner. So I had pretty much retired at the time. So I had all this time in my hand. And I was like, I'll try to, see if I could raise some money for the fund as well, right? I'll help you raise money. So that's how I became partner in Prime Meridian, and like it just kind of took off very, very quickly from there. I think it also helped. Like at the time, a lot of people weren't trusting still weren't trusting the stock market that much because the recovery after 2008 was pretty slow. Remember, like we actually hit the bottom in 2009, right? March 2009 when the S&P 500 was at the lowest, and a lot of people got burned so badly. It wasn't like a COVID, type of recovery. It was very prolonged. So a lot of people didn't know where to put their money. So we had a lot of investors who just wanted to stay, somewhere they could park their money and stay rich, not try to get rich.
Who did you loan the money to? Was it just everyday people or businesses, or what type of loans they were?
So 2006, originally when Prosper came out, and I was like literally one of the first lenders on the platform. Essentially, I was probably one of the first peer-to-peer lenders in U.S. history because that was the first platform in U.S. UK was the thing that had the first platform before Prosper. So most of those were just retail people, like 2006. Once you move forward to 2013, you started to see consumers as well. It was a lot more structured. People weren't like writing what they needed for. It was like, hey, here's the credit, here's a credit profile. It was much more structured information. You kind of make, you lend them money. But the way Prime Meridian did it, I mean, we were bidding on like, I think like 50 loans a second or something like that. So it was very automated. It was very programmatic. That was our first fund. And then we kind of rolled out other funds that focused on like real estate and more opportunistic lending. So it became over the years, the Prime Meridian became a credit, just a credit focused. Like we have a GP, and then we have a number of pure play funds underneath one. Our competitors were really doing the opposite. They were just building one giant fund and throwing all the kinds of loans into one giant big fund, and you just raise against that one giant fund. Our strategy was like, hey, let's build pure play funds. So if somebody wants to just invest in consumer, or somebody wants to invest just into real estate, like hard money loans or bridge loans or whatever, or somebody wants something a little more exotic than that, they could basically pick and choose and build their own portfolio. We just had these like separate funds that we manage. We still do.
I know a story like 8 years ago. Some wealthy individuals as well. They decided that it's a good business to get into, like a consumer loans, unsecured loans. They were in Denmark. I think they invested like 5-6 million euros, and they had some guys running it. But the guys who were running it, they didn't really know how to manage their risk. So they gave the money out within probably 90 days, and then they started waiting. And what really happened was how this industry usually works. What I've seen is when there is a newcomer, a new business, a lot of scammers will go all in. And I think out of this 5-6 million euros, they got back maybe 500,000 or something. So
Wow.
it wasn't that easy.
No, yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't that easy. So our first fund, actually, I believe it's now has a 10 or 11-year track record, and I don't think there's been a single there might have been a 1 month out of those 11 years when we had a negative month, right? Just how just to speak about consistency of like, if you build it right. Um, um, so it's a hard business to manage. Don Davis, who runs that the Prime Meridian, he's the founder and CEO of the company. He's done like a really good job of there are a lot of moving parts. We have some like amazing people on the team who run it. But yeah, it's you got to make sure you're underwriting properly, and you got to be careful not to chase yield too much. Because that's like a lot of times how you get burnt a bit. If you kind of start chasing a lot of new things you don't understand, especially.
When it comes to this consumer lending business, I'm a bit biased as we are running one as well. It's fully pretty much unsecured loans. We have other products as well, like buy now, pay later, but this is like a 5% of the portfolio, and then a full checkout like bank transfers. But the main business, 95% is consumer loans. So my question to you, like we have a very small portfolio, like 3 million euros today. When it comes to building a platform, what would you do today? I mean, our target should be private investors who would like to maybe invest 50,000 euros, 100,000 euros with the interest rates of from 9 to 13 a year, like pretty much raising bonds. When it comes to building this type of marketplace or platform, what would you do?
I think it's been kind of tried. Many different flavors of this have been tried. When peer-to-peer lending platforms initially came out, the goal was like retail investors will invest into other retail borrowers. Over the years, it didn't work. Institutions just kind of like made a lot more sense. I think some of them, I believe Prosper at this point doesn't even accept retail investors anymore for years now. They just became all institutions. I believe there are a couple of platforms that have been able to figure it out. It's very, very complicated to make retail investors, make it work with retail investors. When you talk about $50,000 investments, right? That's pretty much retail. It depends on your sophistication level, your understanding of finances, or your team. I think going after institutional money is easier and more scalable, because when you're building a platform for retail, you're kind of building a consumer platform, right? And then it becomes just as hard to build and manage, because now you're building a brand, right? You're kind of building a brand at that point, and it just becomes just as complicated and as tough as building any e-commerce brand for consumers, right? Because you're now like managing a consumer brand almost like a kind of like e-commerce, right? And making it all feasible with finances. And then I don't know what where you're raising or where you're lending to, like meaning which jurisdiction, which country. Obviously, all these laws could be very complicated. I mean, at least in the U.S. they are, and then you have all different kinds of laws in the U.S. for every state, and those laws get even more complicated when you're borrowing or taking money from consumers and then you're giving it to consumers, right? Like, so because there are extra consumer protection. It's a very regulated space in US. Again, I don't know what you're trying to focus on, so I don't know if I have a good answer for you on which direction to go, but just proceed with caution, just because you're going to be dealing with so much regulatory stuff if you're kind of going after the US market for this. And I think some platforms have been kind of struggling in the last at least a year or two now, especially now, as money and funds are starting to dry up, both on the funding, meaning venture capital funds, and also consumers have less money, less disposable cash to spend. When we came out of COVID, everybody was flushed with money. The governments were printing money. They were, consumers were, they were, their stock market accounts were blowing up. Their crypto wallets were blowing. The money was coming from everywhere. Now it's all coming down. You can't get a loan. People are depleting their deposits. Their credit card balances are going up again. Their crypto, money went down. Now they got to pay their student loans that they haven't been paying for years, right? So yeah, it's a little tougher right now. I know that platforms are struggling right now, and I think it's probably even more the case if you're going after kind of consumer or retail lenders.
Yeah, I'm asking because at this stage we have like 70 investors, and we want to diversify the risk when it comes to at this stage we're giving out this taking those bonds with 1 to 3 year period. Yes, and once we are profitable, which we are, then we can start talking with institutional investors. But we really thought through that. And what I mean is reading about different holding companies who are using institutional capital, they prefer to have funds coming from 10 or 15 or 20 different places instead of one large bank because of the risk. And that's why we were thinking of having all sorts of different ways on how we raise debt, pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Well, that's the game. Like, you got to diversify yourself in terms of capital sources. I mean, we learned that. Well, I learned that, at least with Prime Meridian. When we started out, there was a lot of kind of like high net worth individuals, and then we kind of moved up into the family office space, IRAs, multifamily offices. We got to a point where we actually had a Korean bank was actually an LP in our funds, and they were just like putting in tens of millions of dollars single-handedly. And something changed in their country, like their whatever year, and their central bank, and then the mandates changed for the bank, and all of a sudden we get like a $50 million redemption that's putting pressure on us, right? But diversification is everything. When it comes to capital sources. That's the nice thing about retail, though, is if you can make it work, you have a pretty diversified number of people, right? No one is going to yank tens of millions of dollars from you, because for the most part, when you have your average investor is $100,000 or $50,000 or whatever. So that's the great thing, is diversification about retail. But making it work is logistically could be complicated.
Now, talk a little bit more about raising capital. Obviously, you've raised a lot of it when it comes to this specific business and project. My first question, when it comes to your thoughts and your opinion, how do you see how money works? It's a very general question, but I saw you were discussing it one of the podcasts, and I found it very interesting. So I wanted to re-ask this question.
How money works? I mean, the way, in my opinion, money works, and you know what? And I haven't been the best at using money efficiently, and the reason for that is I'm always a little shy of taking other people's money. I'm usually more scared of losing somebody else's money than my own. So historically, I've always just deployed my own capital into things, and once I feel very, very confident about something and we have enough data, you tend to do well with something, and people start asking you, friends and your family, oh, okay, can I get in on this with you? Like, can I, so sometimes that's been kind of the case, like especially in the real estate space. I start building all these or developing these real estate projects with my own capital. And then like people start noticing, especially since I'm building around, around New York City where I live, people start noticing, it's like, hey, can I get in on that? And eventually he's like, all right, fine. You let your friend in and you let your cousin in, and then they do well and they want to do more. Then they tell their friends, and then their friends start reaching out. So like the real estate thing, like for example, I started allowing, and we just started expanding, how many investors we allow, and are like as that business actually is expanding faster. I've never raised money for my actual companies, meaning I've never raised all of our companies are fully owned by me or my co-founders, and some of it goes to the teams. We do have stock options in our companies, but I've never raised money for the companies. I never raised equity for the companies, right? So the only time I've raised money is for for example the fund Prime Meridian, for the LP fund. So we would get LPs into our funds, or we would have essentially LPs into our each individual real estate project that I build. But I think that it creates when you create value, the money just multiplies very quickly. If you could, and I think that's a trust factor at some point. At some point you kind of get to a kind of a certain inertia where people are asking you to like, hey, can I give you money to put at work? I have a friend who's like selling a $15 million condo. He just doesn't even know what to do with the money right now. He's like, Val, you're getting that money. I don't know what are you gonna do with it, but you're getting that money, and you're gonna invest it for me. And he's super, he's very smart, very successful guy himself. But you get to that level, you get to that point where people just trust you with their finances, and it feels good. But it scares me even more sometimes, when you get that responsibility of somebody else's money.
You mentioned having co-founders, having team. You're obviously a great leader, because otherwise you wouldn't have really built what you have built. But at the same time, you haven't built those companies alone. Who have been your best hires, and how you think you've attract talent?
I always look for character. You kind of look for people who are kind of like ride or die, ride and die with you, kind of a mentality. They're not always maybe the smartest people, right? They're smart, but I'm just saying they're not like the smartest, right? They're not Harvards, and they're not like whatever. But so far for me, it's been like it's those people who are like have that passion and just like unrelenting, want to win, and who kind of want to win with you together. I think those are the people that have been like most successful hires or team, in our teams. How do you find them? It's tough. Sometimes you kind of, sometimes they come through hiring processes. Sometimes they just come out of the left field. Somebody made an introduction. You're like, man, I'd love to have this person on my team, and maybe that person I wasn't even looking. I don't think there's a good answer to that, but from my personal opinion, like I'd rather have people who have like that strong passion. I think they will beat somebody who's smart but doesn't like lacks that like drive. That in my opinion. I don't find myself to be super smart, right? But my drive is like no, like I'm at the top of the game when it comes to drive, right? And I've been able to just get through a lot, through many things, just with my drive alone and curiosity.
Thinking back a bit about your project, what do you think have been your ratio when it comes to hiring 10 people? 1 out of 10 is the person you're looking for, or who have really surprised you when it comes to this tribe. What do you think?
I would say if you hire 10 people, you're probably going to end up with, generally you get like 6, 7 role players, 2 that don't really work out as well. And maybe you let them go, they leave. But usually actually end up leaving on their own. Maybe 1 out of 10, you'll get one of those just superstars, right? You hold on to those people, of course. I would say that's been I would say that's probably the ratio.
Okay. What about the delegation? How do you decide which tasks or responsibilities to delegate, and which do you handle yourself personally?
I pretty much try to delegate as much as possible over to my teams. However, when it comes to things like, you try to delegate as much as possible, but when the fires hit or somebody doesn't have an answer to something, and ends up bubbling up to you a lot of times. So you try to kind of reduce those instances to the minimum. But for the one business that I am operating day to day, like as a CEO, which is Jocalio, the jewelry company, it's always been like, again, I'm always the curious one. I'll be working at 3 o'clock in the morning trying some new thing, right? Like I'll be the one trying, hey, like let's see if I put this and this together and turn it on like this, and I append this data to it, and I go live with it, and let's see how that converts. Like I'm usually the one who seems to tinker with that kind of thing, and kind of enjoy doing it. It kind of keeps me in the game, and and a lot of times I'll come across things like, like okay, that actually worked very well. Let's do this now 100 times over. Then let's get a tech team involved so they could automate that process going forward. And now that's going to be a new service or a new product or a new whatever, right? Like that now becomes a thing, and kind of like you just kind of took this little test, and you just made it an important part of your company, right? Like I like to I like to I like to play around with these little things that could have this potential to be like very powerful.
I want to know a bit more about your thought process behind few of the tweets you've made. Last one was, I think you posted this June. Most efficient way to make 10 million or 100 million or probably a billion is to do something repetitive that works. Just apply small but continuous increments of improvement. Stick to it. Don't bring continuous flow of new ideas that keeps pivoting your product or company. What is this boring work you're doing on day-to-day basis, which you believe will take a company to 100 billion or, as you said, even a billion?
Yeah, like I noticed a lot of people would they start a company and they're building it out. Things are going fairly well. I'll use my jewelry company as an example, right? Our goal is to become the headquarters for all independent jewelers, fine jewelers. As an example, like we just need to expand our services and add more stores into our what we call the collective, right? Everybody kind of joins our collective of jewelry stores that we represent, and we help you get even better. Now, what I'm talking about is like all I need to do is just keep adding more stores, improve my product, and improve my services, right? And keep growing my team. I've seen many times where somebody says, "Oh wow, like we got 100 stores in our network now. Let's do the same thing for car dealerships," right? You're kind of just getting bored of the same thing, so you kind of shift. But there are probably at least 1,000 more stores you could add before in that same category that you're so good at before you jump ship to another category, or kind of these like very dramatic changes that kind of reset you in many ways, as opposed to and lose your focus on what you started to build. I think people a lot of people have this tendency to chase like another shiny thing that has nothing to do with what you're doing. It's fine to chase a new shiny thing, but that's close to what you're building, so that could be an add-on, and it could help your business get better. But once you start kind of doing something else, or changing the strategies too many times, I think that kind of derails you, and you never really get to kind of compound the growth in the company, because everything just compounds, right? You have 100 stores today. If you're growing at a 50% rate, you're going to get 150 to 25, et cetera, right? But if you start doing something else, and you're starting from zero again, and you're like starting that whole compounding process from scratch, you just like kind of lost the momentum.
You mentioned the shiny thing, shiny object syndrome. What about the distractions today? How is it in your own life when building your business? Again, there is probably a lot of days when it's this boring same job, which you got to do. You need to add these new stores, hundreds of those probably. Uh, what are your thoughts about the distractions in this world? You today and you maybe 20 years ago when you got started.
Much harder now. A lot more distractions now. You have when I started, my first successful company, the search business I was talking about before, I was the one man show. I did everything myself because I was afraid to like let anybody know about paid search. It was I thought I found a genie. So I was all alone, and there was really nobody. I wasn't have kids or anything like that. I had no team. I had no employees. I had nobody to distract me, so I could just be totally zoned in for years. Today, that's very different. You have a lot more a lot more distractions personally, and just operating multiple businesses and having hundreds of employees who collectively, that all adds up to a lot of distractions, and it's actually harder to focus on things. And I'm able to get a lot more done because I delegate and have infrastructures in teams, but it's harder. Gets harder to kind of focus on and catch new waves or new ways of doing things because you just don't have as much time to just think. I think it helps me a lot that I'm the type of person that actually I work at very, very late hours. So I'll work 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and nobody's emailing you around that time, nobody's calling you around that time. There are no Zoom calls or kids or anything like that, right? Nobody's distracting you in the office, so you could really kind of hone in and think about some things. And so I mean, that for me, that helps. I know some people are totally opposite. They like to wake up 4 o'clock in the morning, and do those things, or do something productive that allows them to think.
I want to talk a little bit about money, identity, and happiness because I just turned 30. You are probably where I wish to be 10, 15, 20 years from today. So it's always good to ask because this is the place where I might end up. So a few questions for you. You're 41 now, right? Or 42?
Yeah.
Okay. So you made tons of money in your 20s. How do you evaluate your relationship to money today? Has it changed? Has it changed over time?
Yes and no. It changes. Yes, it changes once you're kind of successful. After my 20s, all my money was coming from income, right? So like I just felt like I had this income that's coming in. At first, I thought like, man, there's no way I'm gonna make that much money next year, and I just made more, right? And then I made more. It just kept happening. And then you start thinking to yourself, okay, so like this is gonna be you're gonna be able to do this for a while, and especially as you build more businesses. So your relationship with money is different when it's all income based. Once you kind of switch over to asset based, like once I sold my company, I start kind of making all these investments. You're now looking at it as like, okay, this is my kind of foundation, right? Like this money needs to make more money on its own as well. So it's not just about, hey, how do I generate the most amount of income year after year? It's now like, how do I make that money work for me, right? So I think that was the big change when it was just income, and I thought that's gonna get cut off any moment. I mean, I had no time to really think about spending it, to be frank, in my 20s, so I never really spent it on anything flashy. But years later, when you kind of realize that you now have this like foundational base that generates even more income. Now the two things happen: you become less liquid because you invest all that money, and a lot of that money goes into things like real estate that are less liquid than just sitting in a bank account. But you also kind of start realizing that, okay, like I could use some of that money for I don't have to worry about not having money tomorrow, right? So if you buy something a little expensive or something some luxury, that's okay. It's not gonna be the end of the world. So I think but honestly, like at the end of the day, it's always been just a number, right? You log into a bank account or whatever account you log into, and it's just a number. Like you never see it. I think I said it on one of the podcasts. It's not like you Scrooge McDuck, and you could like jump through through your money in your vault, right? Like it's just a number on a bank account when you log in. That's it. It's like a video game essentially, right? With a score. And that's what it really comes down to. And for me, it's just like I just like the game, play the game, and try to win.
Have you ever had a year where one year you're making, let's say, 10 million US dollars, next year it's one or two, only one or two? Do you feel sad after that? Because I was reading this book about psychology, and there they said that a person who makes one year, let's say 150,000, next year it's 135, doesn't really make him or her unhappy. But when the difference is from 10 million to million, even though the million is like crazy amount of money, this person is sad for some reason. Have you ever experienced that?
I haven't experienced that, but I mean, I was lucky enough not to have have that problem. I did have that once, but it wasn't for a bad reason. When I sold my company, that was generating like a ton of income, and I sold those two companies in 2013. Yes, my income kind of went very low for a bit, because I had this exit, right? But I didn't get upset over it, but it was kind of like, whoa, I don't have like a fire hose of cash coming in every year anymore. It's I have this money and then I got protected. It's kind of became more that mindset shift a little bit. I have to protect it and invest it now. That was kind of like mindset shit. But no, I wasn't sad. But again, I just didn't have. And frankly speaking, I did have that one time early on before it was big money. Um, I think I mentioned earlier when the 1999 2000 bubble hit. I was in high school and my PlayStation website was making me like $5,000 a month. And this is 1999. Like it was a lot of money for a high school kid, especially in those years. Um, that $5,000 a month went to like $500, literally overnight. When the stock market crashed, everything crashed. Literally overnight, I went from making $5,000 a month to $500 a month, and I was making that $5,000 a month for probably a year or so at that point. So, but that only made me like stronger. Like I just kind of figured out how to make money different ways, and that just let help me build up my myself and my business over the years.
How do you keep score today on how you're doing?
It's more about what I like doing, who I'm doing it with, people that I like, and am I enjoying, like, not only am I enjoying it, but like am I building something that could like help a lot of people. Again, the jewelry industry is not an easy industry, and everybody kind of always asks me like, why in the world did you enter such a complicated space? And especially when you're dealing with all these independent jewelers who do things in a very with a lot of times it's like gut feeling decisions, kind of like your family owned businesses, right? But I like that business because I feel like I see that we actually help a lot of families, because a lot of times like you'll have a jewelry store that is it might be doing $5 million but revenue, but that one jewelry store feeds 3 families, and and has like an important part of the community, because that place has been around for decades, in some cases a century plus. And I like seeing how we definitely saved some of these stories from being potential going out of business to like thriving expansionary stories now. So I love seeing that, and when we could do that over and over and over, and tomorrow we could do that for 1,000 stores like that in the country for 1,000 different families. That's a great feeling.
Do you see the jewelry industry is the biggest challenge at the moment compared to other projects you have done before, or it's pretty much the same?
A challenge for me, or like, I mean, like more like an industry is
For
challenge.
for you on what you've seen before, because you said that people have said to you like, why on earth are you going for this industry?
It's a complicated space, and we're taking on so many different parts of the ecosystem. Let's call it. There are a lot of challenges that need solutions, and I feel like I have a team that and a company that we built that has so much knowledge from inside and outside the jewelry industry to come up with these like unique solutions to for these problems, and to solve them for the future. I mean, there are so many different challenges. I mean, now obviously the consumer is spending less. Now you got like all these lab grown diamonds. Kind of hitting them. Been hitting the market very very hard. Consumer habits are changing. A lot of people are okay to buy a man-made diamond versus one that's been sold historically and mined. So that all these different dynamics are just kind of really throwing off everything. A lot of kind of family owned businesses don't know how to cope and keep up. I mean, before there was all this technology, right, that was kind of disrupting them, and they also don't know how to adjust themselves at all or fast enough. And that's when we come in, and we try to kind of keep them not just up to date, but we're trying to keep them actually ahead of the game, by bringing all the everything like our team and all of our experience to the table and all our tech.
What about mentorship today? Do you reach out to someone when you have a question, or you're really thinking of it's 4 a.m. and you're really got yourself thinking, and you maybe don't know that the answer is not the correct word, but you don't really know how to maybe solve a specific problem. When 20 years ago, when you got started, you said you were just pretty much the first one doing paid the search. You didn't really have anyone to reach out. How is it today?
I do tend to kind of try to figure things out on my own. I do have more resources these days. So whether it's my own teams or networks of people that I've built over the years, I definitely have more resources. I've never been part of kind of like any groups or anything like that, but I recently did join. I don't know if you're familiar with Hampton
Mhm.
Founders. So my friends built that, Sam Parr and Joe Spicer, that's their company. And it's like, I'll join it. Let's see how that works out. And actually that's been great. We have a group of very strong people in our core group. And, a lot of things that could bounce off them now because we have like a diversified group of founders in my core group. But you could also kind of reach out to, the 1,000 other Hampton members in their overall membership. It's interesting that you have all these people who are like looking to help each other. Twitter has been also interesting. I've always been very much under the radar, but since I built my Twitter following, um, it's I could if I have a real challenge, I could like literally drop a message on Twitter with that challenge, and I'll get a bunch of people DMing me and with solutions or how they could help. Pretty cool. It's like that's something new for me, because I just built that following. 2022. I mean, I went from 0 to like 100,000 followers, and and we do have a lot of kind of successful people, but also entrepreneurs and people who want to be successful entrepreneurs in my as my followers. So I have a pretty nice group that you could reach out to for solutions, and of course I get asked things all the time as well.
As you have this opportunity to ask help, have you actually done it? Posting on Twitter, asking like how this works or what should I do? Or
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I had there was some strange issues going on with Facebook, and I think it was like August 2022, and a lot of our ads were just kind of getting, and it wasn't just us. I think it was a lot of people. People just ads were just getting rejected, or accounts getting like suspended for no reason. I mean, like kind of like little jewelry stores were getting suspended for whatever random stuff, and I put something up, and somebody reached out to me. I don't want to say his name because he's actually I didn't know who he was, but I became friends with him since. I don't want to mention it because then everybody's gonna ask him for every Facebook favor. But he was very connected in Facebook, and that was he really did help me a lot with that.
So today is 2023. What about Val in 2040? What do you want to accomplish next, and what is the future for you and your businesses?
So that's 17. So 17 years from now, where I'm gonna be.
Yep.
Um, I think that I have. Oh man, that's a lot of years. I hopefully have $1 billion plus exit. For me, my co-founder at Mobile Fuse. That's a big like a mobile ad tech business that we own and started 13 years ago. So I think it's time. I mean, at some point in the future, in the next
You're still
17
owning
years.
it? You're still owning it?
Yes,
Oh.
yeah. And probably develop a lot of real estate, around New York City. We focus like on primarily on kind of a lot of the areas like Williamsburg or Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I don't know if you've heard of these kind of very trendy areas, but we probably built a lot more over the next 17 years as that's been very much expanding. And the jewelry industry has one central headquarters, so all these independent jewelers could focus on what they love doing, which is helping their local communities and customers and handling their sales teams and their employees, and letting us help them do all the kind of the infrastructural stuff, right, that they can't do on their own, and hopefully we have at least 1,000 stores in our collective, as we call it, as a backbone for them, so they could be very successful and continue to thrive against mainly, kind of corporations, right, who have big chains of jewelry stores. So that, I think that if I'm looking at 17 years from now, I would be successful at accomplishing those three things, at least, and that would be three big things in like three very different areas, which is it's hard to imagine that. It's hard to imagine that that's where I'm at today, but like hopefully all three of those things will be very successful in 17 years from now.
You mentioned the real estate, and I wanted to ask, as you're getting older, what is the reason for you getting into real estate? Is it because your risk levels have changed over time, or what is the reason?
Oh, not at all. In fact, like what I realized probably 6-7 years ago is that I had zero exposure to real estate. Start looking at all the real estate stuff. I was like, man, I can't do this cash flowing kind of real estate, where you're earning whatever 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10%, right? With some extra value, and I didn't want to just get into a real estate asset where you're just sitting there and waiting for it to appreciate with some small value adds or whatever, maybe. So I realized that kind of, I think if you kind of control development is most interesting to me, because you kind of have very high returns on that, and there's definitely more risk involved, but I just always felt that like if done right, if you're not going after ego projects, if you're not going after like these super high like big projects that are super high risk, you could really control your risk profile and still generate a very good return. So that was my way of staying aggressive and compounding and quickly and growing, but also going into the real estate, getting that real estate exposure. And as a result, like we're now acquired. Sorry, we went to contract on our 9th project. We just went into 3 projects at the same time in the last 3 years. In the last 2 months, and we just expanded our output from 100 to 200 million dollars, and that's just like, that business is only 6 years old, and we're just like starting now to scale it up, and I mean that's kind of the goal, is keep building it and compounding it, but it's not I'm too young to kind of settle on just like hold and asset appreciation. Like I need to keep building.
Well, it's been awesome, and I'm very excited for the year 2040, and let's see what you've accomplished by that.
I don't know, man. I don't mind slowing down the clock, dude. I don't know if I want 2040 right yet.
Okay, let's wrap up with the famous 5. How old are you?
42.
Favorite book?
Dale Carnegie. I know it's cliche, but hundreds of millions of people read it. Dale Carnegie's How to Make Friends, and influence people. It's a long name. I forget the exact title of it.
It's correct. What car do you drive?
You want the fast one or the faster one?
All of them.
BMW M8 competition, and a Lamborghini Performante.
Awesome. First,
yeah.
It's so surprising. I've been interviewing your interview number 15 or podcast number 15, and all those guys are driving with Fords and some guys with Uber, and I'm always like, where are the Lamborghinis? Now I got it. Perfect. Or they have been lying. I don't know. What's the best investment advice you've ever got?
Patience.
And the last one, where can people find you?
Twitter. I'm probably the most active on Twitter, and I spend probably most of my time from all social is Twitter. Twitter, okay. Just my name, at Val Katayev.
Perfect. Again, thanks a lot for doing this, and really good luck with everything you do.
Thank you, Meg. Thank you for having me on, and looking forward to seeing this thing.